And I would walk down in the morning inside the green zone in Baghdad, just praying and saying, God, I don't know how I'm going to do this today.
Wow.
I don't necessarily have the skills, but I know you know I have the skills. So help me find the right skills, the right words, the right knowledge, the right resources to to address the challenge that I'm going to be given.
Hmm.
You have faith in me. Help me have that same faith.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm Phoenix. Nice to meet
Good to
you.
meet you.
So, where are you from, by the way?
Well, I'm from Wisconsin. With
And
your accent, you're not in the U.S., are you?
no,
Where,
I fool a lot of
okay,
people with my accent,
okay.
to be honest, because nobody. I'm in the UK
In the UK,
currently,
okay.
and a lot of people in the UK, especially more recently, think that I'm from the
Oh,
US,
really? Oh, okay.
which to me is like that's so mad because not there at all,
No,
right?
no, I'm in. So
Yeah,
I'm from Wisconsin, near Chicago. Born
yeah.
in Michigan, raised in Wisconsin. Joined the U.S. military. Spent 27 years hopping around the world. Spent 7 years in Germany, and
Oh
we
wow.
did a number of trips up into the UK. Um, I retired. I retired out of the Pentagon. My last assignment was in the Pentagon in D.C. And
Oh,
then I retired into San Antonio, Texas. So we've been here. It'll be 15 years in October next month. Wow. So
geez,
this is the longest. This is the longest place I've ever lived.
that's impressive.
So it's been a heck of a life. It's been a very blessed life. It's been a lot of fun. The
Oh,
stuff I've gotten to do, the people I've gotten to meet, has been
quite a roller coaster.
something I never would have imagined when I graduated high school or college.
Well, this is exactly what we're going to get
Okay.
into. Because in my head, and I've noticed, because since I started doing this, I had some sort of an idea of just talking to people,
Hmm.
but talking about anything in general. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be anything specific, even though in a way I still want to support people that have a business, let's say, or have something to share with the world. I would still like to do that, but I also want it to be like a conversation and like a lighthearted kind of a interaction between two
Perfect.
people,
That's what
right?
I love. Yeah.
Cool, perfect. And I've noticed with the process that I've gone through now, I've had people that have come on here prepared like for an interview, like with everything lined and this point, that point, and it's going to be structured and routine. And I'm like, cool, that's where we're going. That's where we're going. It's fine, you know. Everybody's different, and everybody's got their own way of presenting themselves and doing things. So in my head right now, I'm thinking because you already started with a little bit about your life and what you've been doing and things like that. So I really want to go deep onto that
Okay.
part and get to know you a little bit,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Nothing in my mind. Nothing's off limits.
Perfect.
If we hit something, I may be careful how I say something, but
Okay.
I mean, I talk politics. I'm not ashamed of where I'm at. I love to hear what other people think. I do not try to push my opinions onto people because frankly, if you and I got in a conversation, I'm not going to change your mind, right? You're not going to change my mind.
Brilliant.
But
Yes.
the fact that we have a discussion and we openly share opinions and
Mm-hmm.
respect people's opinions enriches us both.
Yes, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Like I'm so glad that I don't know anything about you, because I get to hear it for the first
Mhm.
time and get to have the experience of that
There you
first
go.
time of hearing it. So that's what I love about this as well.
Mhm.
I reached out to this group apparently and put out that I'm doing this, and then so many people reached out. I'm like, yes,
Cool.
I get to learn so many new things, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's what I love about this.
Yeah.
So whenever you're ready, start
Well,
whatever you would like. So hello and welcome.
thank you very much.
I'm
Appreciate the
so
opportunity.
it's so cool because I feel like a little bit of what we spoke at the beginning. I'm still gonna add in here in my
Please.
in my bit. So there we go. So yeah, like I said at the beginning part, you're more than welcome to share anything you want to share about yourself.
Yeah.
I'm so open to learning something new about somebody else that I've never met in my life, and yeah, let's see where this is gonna go.
Let's do it.
Yep,
Yeah, I'm excited as well.
cool.
I love meeting people and learning about them. Kind of like what we just
Mm-hmm.
talked a minute ago about politics, right? I have no
Yes.
problem talking about politics, expressing my
Yes.
opinions. I don't try to to convince somebody of something different than what, but I do enjoy sharing the conversation,
Yes.
seeing why people believe what they believe, sharing why I believe what I believe, and maybe will influence my son, my oldest son. I've jumped right in. Look at this. My
Yep.
oldest son has raised my awareness on a number of things
Right.
just because he says something and I say, hey, tell me a little bit more about that, right? And then I go, oh, I need to go research that, right?
Mm.
And one of them was about prisons in America
Yeah.
and the funding and the life in the prisons, and because you never get inside. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when I was in college, before I got married, I played basketball at church with a number of men, and we went up and to a maximum security prison in Wisconsin several times. And we played softball and we played basketball. In fact, when we were playing softball, they had the biggest incident that had ever happened inside the walls of the prison, and it was just players going after each other because they didn't think one guy was giving his all,
Wow.
and that was all he had to give. And but then we'd get together and we'd study the Bible afterwards together with him. And my they wanted me to go up on the morning of my wedding, and my wife was like, "No, not going to happen.
Probably not today.
Not
Not this
today."
particular day.
That's right.
Wow.
So, I love
So
meeting new people and
yeah, same here.
new
Same here.
experiences.
Yeah, and this gives me an opportunity to explore that, right? Just like with you. So I don't know, because you said something about your college years and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Where, okay, go start wherever, like with your life,
Mm,
let's say, and
mm. Well,
what you've been experiencing.
what I was making the comment was that I've just been extremely blessed, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I when I was going through high school and college, I wanted to design wastewater treatment plants. I wanted to do that to stop the pollution going into the river that was killing our fish and our animals and the plants and creating what was turning into very putrid smelling, putrid looking
Mm.
streams covered with foam, covered, just the odor, sulfur, and all this stuff. And I wanted to change that. And when I graduated college, those jobs weren't there. It was the recession of 1982 for us. And so I joined the U.S. Air Force. I didn't want to go back and get a master's degree. I was done with school. I
Mm-hmm.
was struggling with my motivation to stay engaged those last years. It took me 5 years through college because I took a bunch of extra classes, right? I worked at the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, honeybee research station. So we were trying to create a genetic barrier for the Africanized bee coming up through Mexico. And I was working with a gentleman doing studies on wood preservatives impact on bees, honeybees. So we were doing a lot of really neat stuff, and so
Mm-hmm.
I took extra classes to learn about that,
Mm-hmm.
and just other classes that I wanted to take from environmental. But I got out in 1982 out of college and took an opportunity for 4 years to get into the service, to U.S. Air Force, and
How old were you? Sorry, how
I
old were you at the
was
time?
23,
Oh, wow.
and officer training school was extremely challenging to get me a motivated, disciplined, but it had a huge lifetime impact on me. And I went in for 4 years and stayed for 27. The,
Oh
the,
my.
the things I got to do, right? The people I got to meet, the challenges I got to face. When I made Colonel, I got to go to Baghdad and be one of the leaders on the reconstruction of a country, $12 billion of projects. We were designing security forts and fire stations and redoing the communication network and roads and highways and oil and water, wastewater treatment plants and electric power stations and substations. And we were all over the country as much as we could, given a tough security situation. So,
That,
and
by the way, before I don't have a poker face, and I've been told this as well. So if my jaw is gonna be to the floor throughout this thing, just know that oh my god, like already where you started
yeah.
with all of this. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
go.
why I say it. That's why I say it's just been such a blessed life. I never would have
Yeah.
imagined that I would get to do the things I've gotten to do. And in fact, I was just on a call before this, so I was a couple minutes late. Um, the last couple of years, I've taken on greater roles with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society.
Mhm.
With their vision is a world free of blood cancer.
Mm.
I think right now they say that every 90 seconds, somebody around the world is diagnosed with a blood cancer.
Wow, that's
And
a lot.
way too many are kids. Way too many do
Mm.
not survive. But they're doing research to try to find cures for the different blood cancers. And at the same time, they're trying to work with the parents to walk through that. Because that's a huge thing when all of a sudden you realize that there's stories where coming up on Christmas, the days before, somebody just doesn't have enough energy, they feel tired, and then they take them to the doctor. The doctor says, just do a blood test. They come back with leukemia. Boom, they're whisked off via helicopter to a major hospital, and they don't come back for months, if they come back
Mhm.
at all. It
Mhm.
just happens that fast.
Mhm.
And so it's huge on the finances and the mental situation of parents. So they're doing research to try to cure it. They got resources to try to help the families through it. They've got money to help the kids and or adults, and some of them are adults, to be able to, I don't even know all the details here, but like wheelchairs and walkers and just anything you can think of to help them try to have a resemblance of a life as they're going through all this.
Mhm.
And so there's so much resources there. So I'm contemplating how I'm going to be involved over the next year.
Maybe it's interesting to me how you started with saying that in college you were studying bees, right?
Hmm.
And now you're going into this. And I don't know if you, I'm sure you've heard of Zach Bush. Maybe you haven't. Zach
Oh,
Bush.
I've not.
Oh my God, because
Tell me.
he's so much into the farming industry at the moment. He was a medical professional doctor. I cannot tell you in what area, and he still is somewhat, but he's worked, now he's turning his research and everything into changing the way our soils into which we grow our food are being worked with. And because you mentioned leukemia, and then I thought of the bees, and then what he's doing with his work right now is trying to figure out all the things that are like women being on what's it called, on contraceptive. I couldn't think of the word. Women being on contraceptive and how that affects the water that we drink, and how there's so many children with autism and so many people with cancer and things like that, and how everything that we eat, and starting with the soil that we plant our food in, is influenced by all of this. And
Yeah.
he's working into changing that. So it's interesting to me that you're bringing up initially the bees and now the leukemia. Is like you're doing the whole full circle of rediscovering and finding new pathways and new tracks in which to go to with whatever life is presenting to you,
That's
by
right.
the sound of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm an environmental engineer, right? I wanted
Hmm.
to protect the environment.
Hmm.
So now my wife got me into bird watching.
Oh.
So with this weekend, we were down on the coast on the Gulf of Mexico, and on Sunday, we were able to get a kayak, two-person kayak. So we went out. There's hundreds of thousands of acres, 18 inches of water. So we were just canoeing around that, kayaking around that area, and the great blue herons, the great egrets, the osprey, all the different birds that were there, and you see how delicate nature is,
Mm-hmm.
and the potential for us to destroy it if we're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
So it just made me think. I haven't volunteered in that area for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm
And it's
65, maybe I need to think about what am I
yeah,
going to do for the next 20 years. How
it
do I?
sounds like this is what life does, right?
Yeah.
It starts you on a path, and then you take another route altogether, and it kind of brings you back to where you started somewhat. I want to bring you back to where you started, to be honest,
Okay.
because I want to know a little bit more about your years in the force, in the army, in
In the Air Force.
whatever you call it. Because see, I'm not from over there. I have a lot of friends from the States, and I've traveled last year for about 10 months through it,
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah.
it was another experience altogether of my life, to be honest. So I know some of it, but I don't know a lot of it. I don't know what the system is like. I don't know much politics about it because you mentioned politics earlier, and I'm like, I am so clueless to it. So anyway, I'd like to know about your view on everything. Like, what was your story? Because you were involved in all of it. So of course, everybody's got their own filters and their own lenses that they see the world through. So yours
That's right.
must have been completely different than anybody else's. So
Sure it was.
that's what I wanna know about.
Yeah. So I joined because I was an environmental engineer. So the Air Force has a number of ways that they employ engineers. One of them is on installations. So Air Force bases, right? That's where they house the planes and or the missiles, depending. And so as a civil engineer, we maintain the roads and facilities and restrooms and lights and all of those things to support the people doing the mission. Part of the environmental piece was to make sure that we had good water, that we didn't disturb the wildlife as we disturbed them as little as possible, right? To
Hmm.
try to live in, I'm not going to use the right word, cohabitate, so to speak, you know,
Communion, is it communing with nature?
communing with nature, good stewards of the environment.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of my area, minimizing hazardous material use, making sure we disposed of hazardous waste properly, having we call it a spill control and countermeasures plan, so that if something does spill like fuel or hazardous waste, we know what it is, how much is there, how to clean it up. We have containment around the big fuel dikes to contain it. So we try to minimize any A, loss, but B, damage to the environment. That was my big piece.
Hmm.
And through that, I got to lead a number of teams. I got into the readiness because as an Air Force, we deploy all around the world to support the airplanes wherever they go. So I got to deploy in 1991 twice. We were in Germany and we deployed into Turkey and then down into Iraq. So we supported our aircraft, we supported other aircraft, helicopters for combat search and rescue missions, stuff like that. So we ran the tent city of, started the first one with 500 people. The second one, just a couple months later, we had 1,800 people in the first week. So it was just amazing. We had we worked negotiated an arrangement with a farmer down on the Turkish-Iraqi border to use a 2 mile by 3 miles plot of his farm field for our tent city.
Wow.
And it was just humongous. Couldn't believe how fast it went up, how many resources were there, the logistics to bring it all in. At some point every night we had 50 to 100 semis of material waiting to be unloaded. And my guys and others were there to help unload it, get it in the right place, and then to set up the tents, set up the kitchens, set up whatever to support the operation. So it was really interesting. So the joy of leading that kind of thing kept me in.
Hmm.
And then I just worked up to squadron commander and then group commander. Group commander I was over 7 different squadrons that were in my
Wow.
group. So about
Uh-huh.
1,600 people.
Wow.
So it
That's so.
was, but it was, there was, I finished in 2004 being, as I said, the reconstruction of Iraq. And I would go home at night and I would walk down in the morning inside the green zone in Baghdad, just praying and saying, God, I don't know how I'm going to do this today.
Wow.
I don't necessarily have the skills, but I know you know I have the skills. So help me find the right skills, the right words, the right knowledge, the right resources to to address the challenge that I'm going to be given.
Hmm.
You have faith in me. Help me have that same faith.
Mm.
And then sure enough, I just remember this time we're, if I talk too much, stop me.
It's all right. Keep going.
I arrived on a Sunday, and that Tuesday, the person I was replacing left, so he had 48 hours to train me on how to run this $12 billion reconstruction program. Our boss, who was a Navy one-star retired engineer, left on the next morning to go back to his daughter's wedding, and the boss said, "Don't come back." Must have been some things going on. I never really learned about it. So all of a sudden now I was in charge.
Wow.
My first week, that Friday, I was told that the Defense Contract Audit Agency was coming. So we were going to audit the program. So I had to get smart. On day 5, I had to brief all these people from Washington, D.C. on the program. And that night, we flew out via helicopter all night, overnight, to this U.S. Marine Corps base to meet with a bunch of Iraqi contractors and try to start a new program of how we were going to bring integrity into the program. Because up till that point, people would walk into a city with millions of dollars of cash in a backpack, and they would
Wow.
say, we want to rebuild. Look at a contractor. We want to the mayor who had contractors say, we want you to rebuild that bridge. We think it's going to cost about this much money. Here's the design we want you to follow. Can you do that? And they'd say yes. I say, okay, here's the money. And they would come, we'll be back in 3 months. They come back 3 months later and nothing had happened.
Mm.
And they found out that the money was gone. The mayor might be gone. The brother, it was the brother who was going to have this contract who's gone. It's like, so we can't do that anymore. So we were going to open up a bidding process where we are going to have integrity and we'd have payments. So we were going to treat it like construction in the U.S., but
Mm-hmm.
the infrastructure processes, equipment weren't set up in Iraq for that. So we had to slowly work our way into it. And so it was really an interesting weekend for
And
me to
just,
meet my team as well as to learn the whole roles, what we're going to do.
that's exactly what I was like. There's so many things that I wanted to pick at in there because there's the learning at a fast speed, but the one thing that I kind of zoned into because you were in completely different territory. So I'm thinking, what was that like for you, like on a personal level? I don't know at the time. Did you have any family, and what did that feel like for you? I am more inclined to think of the feeling side of things, you
Yeah,
know. So I'm very curious how that had an impact on your life and your mental
yeah.
state, by the way, because there's a lot. There's a lot.
There's a lot there. My two boys were in college. My daughter was my second son had just graduated college before I left. Graduated high school, so he was off to college. So two of them were in college. My daughter was a sophomore in high school. And we were living in Germany, near Kaiserslautern, Germany.
Hmm.
So they were well taken care of by friends, by the squadron, the unit. So I didn't really have to worry too much about them. I did worry a little bit because sometimes everybody gets busy and my wife needed that interaction. And sometimes she would call people and they'd say, hey, just whenever you need something, just let us know. Well, she'd call up and say, hey, I need something. And they wouldn't catch it. And she would let me know and I'd call them back and say, hey, Scott, I need you to invite Karen over. She needs somebody to socialize with this week. Can you guys do that? Oh
Wow.
yeah, we can do that. It's like, so we just had to be more blunt, right? She was a little bit leery of asking for
Hmm.
people to go out of their way,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I would do it for them, so I know they would do it for me.
Yeah.
It's just that brotherhood,
Yeah.
and I don't mean brotherhood isn't just men, right? It's just the brotherhood of men and
Family.
women coming
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
family helping each other. And so I didn't have any fear there. I only had fear of, am I going to be smart enough? Imposter syndrome, right? Am I going to be smart enough to know how to do this? The ambassador called me in one day and said, we need to talk about this. And I studied it overnight and like, okay, we're talking earned value. I've never done earned value before, but I did some research on the web that morning and figured it all out and been able to work a briefing for him of how we need to implement it. And we started down that path.
Hmm.
I was just honest with the ambassador. Sir,
Mm.
I've never done this before. I'll find experts on my team. I will find people and we'll figure out a system and we will reach back and we'll get the software and we'll implement it. But it's not going to happen overnight. But it's exactly what we need to do. Because what was happening was earned value. What it's basically saying is, I've spent this much money. Here's in the plan. I should have this much of the project done, and you can compare where you think you should be along the way until you're 100% spent and 100% done. And what we were finding is we were 50% spent and only 25% done.
Mm.
So we had, they called it RIO and Restore Iraqi Electrical, Restore Iraqi Oil infrastructure. And they had $100 million for each that they put together. And all of a sudden they came to me in like my third week and said, "We need you to sign this change order for $100 million." Like, you want me to sign? I said, "Have a seat. We need to talk." And they said, "Well, we don't have time to talk. We just need you to sign it." Mike, I said, here's how this is going to go down, right? Either you're going to sit down and talk to me and tell me what this is all about, or you're going to find somebody else to sign it. And I don't know who
Wow.
that's going to be, but I'm not going to sign it blindly, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the Jack Anderson test, right? The Jack Anderson, the media guy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, being in the UK, but it's the Jack Anderson test, we called it. If you had to get interviewed by a TV personality, Jack Anderson, on live TV, could you explain what you did and how you took the proper precautions? And I said, I'm not going to be the guy who just blindly signs for $100 million without, and then I have
Knowing
no
what it is.
explanation. So sit
Yes.
down and let's talk. And about a half hour later, I signed it,
Right.
and
So you
and
had
it
the explanation.
had the
Yeah.
explanation. It all made sense how we're going to go through this, but it was 100% cost overrun. So we had no mechanism to manage earned value of where we were in the project. So now we were implementing earned value with the right software and the right information off the project. So now we could measure ourselves as we're proceeding along so that we didn't have these huge cost overruns because we only had $12 billion. So every time you overran here, you had to take money out of something else, right? And what we really wanted to do was renovate hospitals and renovate clinics and build schools. And so we wanted to get security was a big issue. Education of the people was a big issue. The electrical and sewage was a huge issue. So we wanted to keep that money in there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the weekend I came back, so this was on day 7. I'd been there 7 days. I fly back in at 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and I get the word that the civilian 3-star equivalent is having a meeting. He wants me there, and I'm like, I've been gone all weekend. I just want to go back and get a meal. I want to take a shower, and I'll be ready tomorrow. Nope, you need to be at the meeting. Well, next thing I know, he tasks me to do an analysis of the entire reconstruction program and find ways to save money. And I have 5 days. And I'm like, why 5 days? He goes, because on 5th day, I'm flying back to Washington. I have to brief the Secretary of the Army and um, Washington Post. Who else was he had to brief Congress? He had to brief Congress on the program. He'd only been there 3 weeks longer than I had, right? So he said, Don, this lays the benchmark in for the program so that we now can move forward. So we found it was $1.3 billion, about 10% cost savings by making some changes and keeping
Oh,
money into the program. But that was X number of schools we were going to be able to continue with, X number of hospitals, X
yeah.
number of clinics, X number of border forts that would stay in the program instead of being put in some other area that wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the Red Cross. You see my Red Cross, American
Mm-hmm.
Red Cross,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my coffee cup. We are always trying to shoot for 91% of every dollar goes to the people that are impacted by floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever the client, 9% in overhead. So that was the same idea. We wanted to minimize the amount of overhead so the majority went into the projects
Mm-hmm.
to reconstruct the country. And we didn't have any mechanisms until we were putting it in place while I was there.
Oh my God. Okay, there's one thing that I need
Please.
to point out. It's your integrity, first of all, because that stuck with me. When you mentioned about signing a paper blindly, I'm just gonna sign it because. And also, you mentioned your imposter syndrome in there somewhere. Plus, I see how calm you are. So I'm imagining the imposter syndrome part. How did you manage all of this? How did you get to this place of having all this stillness inside of you? Because this is what it looks like from the outside. It looks like no matter what the weather, let's say, well, no matter what you're being thrown at you, you're finding a way and you're managing your way through it. So how did you get to this place?
I had a good friend of mine while I was there. He was in the Air War College. So as an officer, at 3 key points in your career, you go in residence to a school. As a captain, you go for 8 weeks. As a major, you go for 10 months. And then as a colonel, you go for 10 months. So he was at the senior service school, we called it. And he wrote me an email that says, Don, we're doing some studies here, and I want to know what we need to do to prepare officers to take on the role that you're taking on. And I sat down for about a half hour and I kind of brainstormed the different skills and temperament and other things that I was applying. And I wrote back and I said, well, at that point, it was 21 years. It takes 21 years to prepare an officer to do the things that I'm doing
Wow.
today. Because you've had to go through all the projects and all the leadership and make all the mistakes and see so many things happen around you that you now learn from, so that when they come up, you know how to address it
Hmm.
and lead with enough calm that people have confidence in you, right?
So see that. So you mentioned 21 years, and
Hmm.
you mentioned mistakes that you've
Hmm.
learned from. So that's what I, to me, that's the goal that you reached. Like you realize the benefits of making mistakes somewhat, or failure, because a lot of people don't want to make them because they think they're not beneficial, they don't take you anywhere. So I love your approach to that, the fact that you know to learn from the mistakes. 21 years. Wow. So in those 21 years, were you the same kind of person? So when you started going to the Air Force, let's say, so because that's the other part, see, going a bit further back, or into the past, of how that process went for you, because I'm sure there must have been some challenges throughout the way. And how did you learn to respond differently, basically? What was it that helped you through the process of, okay, this is, I've made a mistake in here before, am I going to do something different? What was your thought process, your, I don't know, skills? What was it that you implemented?
Yeah, two thoughts. One is my personality.
Yeah.
So on the DISC, if you've ever done the DISC assessment, DISC, dominant, influencer, steady, stable, and compliant. I'm an SC. My I and D are below the line. So my S and C are the dominant personalities I bring, which are um, teamwork oriented, collaboration oriented, resist change, resist conflict, but also very analytical, comply with the rules. I can think. I can think to the edge of the box, but when people say think outside the box, that's usually when you're non-compliant. So
Mm,
I'll push the box, push the edges of the box, but I won't naturally step out unless I can figure out a way to manage that. So, that's the first piece, is understanding myself. And I'm not sure I really understood myself then, but I knew enough about it to know how I react. But the second big one was, every time I would make a statement or react out of emotion, it would come back to haunt me. So I learned not to do that. I learned to think, to ask, and if I didn't know something, I would say it. So, perfect example. One night I'm talking to a senior NCO and he asked me a question. And I said, I can't tell you that. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that that was classified. And I stopped for a second. I said, I'm sorry. That's not what I was meant to say. I can't answer that because I don't know the answer to your question. I think I know who to go ask to get that answer. But I said, thank you for responding back with that. So now I could clarify, right? It's not that
yes.
I can't tell you. It's that I don't know the answer to tell
Yes.
you.
Yes.
But I will go research it and I will come back to you. And the next day about 4 o'clock, because that was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Next day at 4 o'clock, I came back and said, "Hey, can I give you that answer from last night?" And he goes, "You came back?" And I said, "Well, I said I was going to come back." It was important to me that I hold that, what's the right word? Commitment, integrity,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
accountability. Because I'm asking you to do that when I ask you questions. So I need to do it when you ask me questions. And
And,
so I grew through that interaction to be able to interact with people and trust people, them to trust
mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I loved getting out of my office and going down and sitting down and talking to people
Mm-hmm.
because you build relationships. An S person, S disc personality is very, like I said, very teamwork, very collaborative. On the Myers Briggs, I'm a 49 on the introvert extrovert scale. which means I'm right in the middle.
Right
And
at the cusp. Yeah,
they now
yeah,
call it an ambivert,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I am shy, but it's a big part of it. The introvert extrovert is about how you recharge. So I recharge by being with people. I recharge by being alone, but I can't do predominant of both, of either.
Right. Yes.
So when we go to I'm a John Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, coach. So when we go to our conferences, I would go down at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'd be in charge of the greeting team, and I would put everybody in place and I would be greeting people, and we're just interacting all day, and we would meet people at our table because I was a table host, and we'd meet people at the break. And by 1 o'clock, I was mentally worn out.
Mm,
And we'd have about a 2 hour break in the afternoon, and I would go grab my swimsuit and I'd go out to the pool and I'd just sit by myself for a while just to recharge.
yes.
And then I could come back in and get back in it because we would now have some nighttime activities. And we'd go to the bar at 10 o'clock, and about 11, 12 o'clock, you'd go back to your room and get some sleep. So if I didn't take that break, I would not be able to recharge.
Yeah.
And I managed it through the conference. So then the last day when I head home, I'm pretty much by myself, and that's when I can recharge. So you have to manage that. So I've learned along the way how my personality works so that I can be the best. I don't try to force. If I was to try to force 18 hours a day interacting with people 3 days, 4 days in a row, 5 days in a
That
row,
wouldn't work.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't work for me. So
Did it
I had to learn how to manage it.
did it take a while for you to get to the understanding of
Hmm.
this doesn't work, I need to do something different?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all of a sudden I would see myself emotional,
Mhm.
agitated, aggravated, just a lot of different ways I would say things I wouldn't normally say, and it
Mhm.
would come back to haunt me. And I just learned that I have to do better than that.
Mhm. It's interesting when you mentioned the emotional part of it, and
Hmm.
I in here in the UK there used to be a program called SAS Who Dares Wins. And there's an equivalent in the US with ex-military officers or people that are training normal people into the go walking them through the whole process of the SAS, which is special forces basically, right?
Yep.
And in here in the UK, I watched the first series and then I just got so hooked, and I cannot tell you why.
Yeah.
But there's the guy, I actually had the book, I didn't finish reading it. Ant Middleton is his name, and he's one of the people that was training people in the course, but had been special forces and been to
Hmm.
Iraq and been to all these places. And that was one of the things that he was talking about. Like you cannot let your emotions take over you, because it's life and death situation. And if I'm on the field somewhere and you're not sure what decisions to make, am I going to want to be next to you? Am I going to be able to trust my life in your hands, basically? Because I need to know that you're capable of having to look after me too, besides your own. So when you're talking in there, about all this and having your emotions in check, basically, and learning how to, oh, this doesn't work, I need to do something differently. I like that process. There was something else in there that I completely forget, because there's so many things that you bring up that I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then I don't want to interrupt you because it's so
Sure.
good and I love the flow of conversation. So yeah, you kind of stopped at, or you gone to the point of rebuilding Iraq, right? So how long did that take? Like how long were you in there in that
Oh, I was there
process?
for 4 months.
Okay.
They worked to get me extended, but my bosses knew that they were sending me to my group command,
Mhm.
and I had to go back and prepare for that. I had to
Mhm.
do some other things in my career, and they had other people. They were deploying colonels in for 120 days, so they had somebody behind me that was going to take my place.
Mhm.
So if I stayed, that person wouldn't get that opportunity.
Was that because of the stress of the position, or why was it only 4 months? Or is that the way
um,
it goes? Because I don't know. See, I'm asking because I
it's
really don't know.
yeah, I think it's a combination of a number of things. You can only operate at that high level for so long.
Mhm.
I mean, my day off was on Friday. Instead of getting up at 5 and going to the gym and be in the office at 8, I would get up at 7, go to the gym, get breakfast, and be in the office by 10.
Oh wow. So that was a
Right?
day off.
That was my day off. And we would work till 9 or 10 at night. You'd get above
Yeah.
6, 7 hours of sleep, and you'd back at it because you just needed that time.
Yeah.
So if we didn't manage our sleep to manage our energy, we would have problems. Um, so I had to. You can only do that for so long. I think that's the big thing. The Army was
Mhm.
pushing people there for 12 to 15 months and expecting them to maintain a steady level of production. And I noticed even on a 4 month deployment, the 3 month point, you kind of go down until you come up and say, "Oh, I've only got X number of weeks left. Now
Mhm.
I can hold on
See
to
the
that
finish
to be
line. Yeah.
motivated." If I'm there for 12 months, about the 8 month point, you go down and you come back up, and I go, "Okay, I only got 2 or 3 more months to go."
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter how long you've been there. There's a dip, and you kind of have to recognize that. And
Mhm.
that's why sending people back for R&R, 2, 3 days off, whatever, just to be in a different environment. When I was in Turkey, I was with my squadron commander, and he said, finally, I was the last guy to get to go. In fact, most of my team had already redeployed back to Germany. He says, now I want you to go down to, we were in forward in Turkey. I want you to go back to Adana, Incirlik Air Base. I want you to take a couple days off. But while you're there, I want you to work all of these award and decorations for the team. And I want you to work this piece for our redeployment. I want you to work this. So pretty much what he gave me was a 8 hour a day job, which
Gosh,
compared to a 15 hour a day job, 8 hours
much
was
better.
only, yeah. So I could get up at 5, I could go run, I'd get to the office at 8, I'd get out at 5, we could go to dinner at the club, we could have a couple beers, right? We could get early sleep. So you can relax a little bit. It was relaxing,
Mhm.
but it's not like what most of my team got to do, which was go back and have no responsibilities for 3 to 4 days. But it was enough for me to recharge. I don't know if he knew me and that was going to be good enough, or that's just what we had to do. But it was recharging for me, and I was able to take advantage of it.
Do you feel
So, so,
like
so I think you have to kind of put a lot of that together of how do you manage your sleep, how do you manage your
yeah.
people, how do you manage the motivation. And I think that's why it became very important for me as a leader to look into the eyes of my team and figure out, are they okay? To observe their change in behavior, their change in personality, their change in approach, and not be afraid to pull somebody away and say, "Hey, I just need you to go get away from this for a couple hours, or I need you to, you know, whatever, to
Mhm.
relax. I need you to change. I need to talk to you. I need you to talk to somebody else, whatever it might be, to figure
Mhm.
this out and not hide from it, but to recognize it."
Yes. I I I love that you're a leader.
Mhm.
I love that you're a leader because you haven't touched that much on the things that you would do, but even this, it kind of shows me what skills a leader has. Because I feel like in my life, I have this thing of I'm better as a second best, even though I don't like being second best
Yeah.
or under, or just like, oh, somebody else being the limelight, light lime. I don't know what it's
Limelight,
called.
limelight.
There
Yep.
we go. And I can be at the back, I can be. I don't need to be at the front to be seen and heard and whatever, but I also don't want to be the second one. So it's a conflict in there. But I,
Yep.
I like how you're approaching everything, and this thing of keeping somehow to your routine. And I was gonna ask, whether this has been something that stuck with you throughout your life, and if it's anything that you feel like you've given up, or if you have, like, let's say, stopped your routine, how has that affected, your day-to-day life? What is it like now that you're not in there every day doing the same things, or are you still doing them?
Through most of my 27 years, I woke up at 4:50 in the morning and headed out to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd work out for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. I'd get back 6:37, get showered, head to the office. I still do that 5 days a week. If I don't, like on the weekend, I'll still get up and I'll go walking. If I don't
Mm-hmm.
get 10,000 steps a day, I just don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to have that exercise. And I just started doing more weightlifting and more uh, body weight exercises like push-ups, sit-ups, squats.
Yes.
So I'm 65, so I got to keep my muscles and my joints working. So I feel
Yes.
better that way.
Yes.
Um, so that routine has kept it. So you just talked about touring, 10 months touring the US. My wife and I did 31 days, 5,000 miles, 15 states, 2 countries in July. We took off in our camper and we toured, saw a bunch of friends, we saw coworkers, we saw sights. We just had a really good time. But I totally got away from that getting up at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it has been, to go to answer your question, it has been a challenge to
Mm.
get back into the routine.
Mhm.
Because now I'm used to getting up and we'd have breakfast in the camper and we'd get ready to go out and bird watch or hike, or we'd get ready to move to the next location. And I didn't work out for 2 hours in the morning. So I'm trying to rebuild that. And it's
Yeah.
amazing. No matter how many years you've been doing it, it can go away so fast.
Wow.
And I have to have a checklist basically on my phone that says, at this time I'm going to do this, at this time I'm going to do this,
Mhm.
because I'm setting that long-term goal.
Mhm.
I have this thing I call the wheel of life. It was given to me, and you measure where you're at in your goals in different areas of your life: physical, professional, financial, relationships, spiritual. It can be, and you can add one. And where am I at based upon where I want to be? And what's the gap? What do I need to do? And one of those, the physical piece, is my goal is to be able to play on the ground with grandkids. I want to be able to get down and play trucks or get into the playground and push them on swings or climb. I want to be the guy who climbs up the stuff with them, right? Or the grandpa. And
I love that.
we take them playing disc golf. So I want to be that grandpa who's engaged. In fact, my future daughter-in-law has even said, it's so neat because my parents never get on the ground with kids.
Wow.
So you do that. So,
Mhm.
to do that, I have to keep the body healthy
Mhm.
and keep my weight down and all those things.
Mhm.
So that's just one area of my 5
Yes.
where I'm driving certain things, right? Now it's probably another one's going to be volunteerism. What do
Mhm.
I want to do to volunteer? Oh, is it the leukemia lymphoma? Is it the Red Cross? Is it environmental sustainability? What is it I want to do? Where do I want to leave my
So,
mark?
did you, with these ones that you mentioned, have you already volunteered for them a little bit here and there, or
Oh yeah,
okay?
I was on the board for the Red Cross for 8 years.
Oh
Worked my
wow.
way up to board chair for the San Antonio chapter, which is a pretty big chapter. This last year, I was a team member for, they call it the Leukemia Lymphoma Visionary of the Year. So they had 10 visionaries. Each one had a team. And together, we were trying to raise $500,000, which is what we
Mhm.
did.
Wowzer.
So for 10
That's
weeks,
impressive.
yeah, for 10 weeks, we're out sending emails, posting on social media, having phone calls, doing events, trying to raise money. As I said before, research, you know, work with parents, call
Mhm.
lines, give resources, help people go
Mhm.
suffering through that, whatever we can do to help them.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
What's this is so random, but what astrological sign are you? I would
Leo,
think. Oh wow! I
Leo
would
the
have never
lion.
guessed that. I
Is that
would
right?
have never guessed that. I thought. See, I don't know much. I don't. It's so interesting how I don't feel like I've interacted much with Leos throughout my life,
Hmm.
and I would have never known. Like that's
Is that
that's
right?
that's one of the things I would have never guessed. But I feel very inspired. Like even the fact that you have that disc that you mentioned, and you have a goal set on each. I feel like this is what I'm working towards. So this is very inspirational for me too. I'm discovering more often lately that there are places where I don't feel that I have enough discipline. So this is why I asked you even about the things that you do, the routines that you get into, and I have had to push through. Okay, if I set my mind to do something, to push through and finish it, like 3 day water fast. That has been a thing for me for a while, and I always manage to do just 24 hours. And I have actually managed to do a 3 day water fast recently,
Oh,
which
wow.
in my head, I was like, it really is in the head. It really is. Everything really is in the head. And I think I'm gonna have to ask you about the traits. The one of the tests you mentioned, 2 tests that you've done about your personality. Because I'm
Okay.
so into I'm so into all of this. So whenever we get off this, maybe message me with all the details.
Yeah, I'll send you the wheel
And
of life.
yes, that would be great.
Yeah.
And because I find I don't even know where else to go with this at this point
Yeah.
because you
So,
seem You seem
So
like such an amazing being, to be honest. And inspirational was that? Is that God?
that's God.
Divinely so. Yeah.
I can do anything through him who gives me strength.
Okay, so let's go on that route if you're open to it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
So
know a lot
I
of
want to ask
people.
you a question before that, and then
Yes,
we'll come back to
yes,
that.
that's fine.
Is because I love the conversation. You've
Yes,
talked about you achieving your goals.
yes.
How have you found it to be successful for you, right? Because I talked about keeping a routine. I had to understand when I started in the military, I would go to the gym at lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found that I would not step away at lunch. So I had to go at 5 in the morning on my time. I could take a little bit of my work time in the morning. That was allowed in the Air Force. And I just adjust my schedule because I'll go till 6 at night. So I'm still
Yes.
getting 10, 11 hours in. But I would not step away during the day. So I had to do it in the morning or at night. And I didn't want to take it away from the family. So I had to work my schedule to make it work.
Mhm.
And then I had to commit to it. So how do you work the different things you're doing?
It's so interesting because I feel like I've gone through stages in my life
Hmm.
of the same thing of I start a routine, I stick with it, and I kind of become obsessed with it somehow. Like for me, throughout my younger years, I never liked exercising, like anything to do with me not being able to catch my breath. I don't want to do that. I want to
Yep.
stay way clear away. And then probably about 4 years ago now, yes, more, maybe more than four, I got to a point where I knew I needed to do something to keep my body healthy, right? And walking wasn't cutting it because I walk every day. I love to walk. That's one of the things that I want to keep doing forever throughout my life. And I discovered yoga, and I thought, oh, this really, because it had the spiritual side to it, and it also had the physical side, and it didn't feel like exercising. Yet I was sweating so much, and I could feel like my muscles working and different parts of my body that I didn't even know I had, and stretching and everything. And I've noticed what it done off the mat, because this is what I loved about it. I can do whatever I was doing on the mat, but it was transferable to my day to day life, like balancing, let's say, or
Yep.
core strength, because you need it for various different things that you do throughout your day. So that was one of them. I think I had to really push through the voices in my head of, oh, you can do it later, or you can do it another day. And the same as you, I've noticed, for me, it was a thing of doing it in the morning. If I wasn't doing it in the morning, I knew throughout the day I would get doing other things, and I wouldn't have time to do it. So then I would be like, oh, I forgot to do it. Now I gotta do it, so I need to do it later, or it's one of them things. So a lot of pushing out of the comfort zone, pushing out of that box. You said you were expanding your boxes, earlier. For me, it really had to be a thing of I need to learn how to push out of my comfort zone. And another one for me, for pushing out of that limitation that I have around myself, has been breath work. Because throughout the past few years, same, I discovered breath work. And in the type that I practice, there's breath retention on your exhale. So you hold your breath after you've got your lungs empty. And I never even knew that even that's a transferable skill, because if you push like a few seconds, it's literally training your mind to, oh, I can do this. I've got self discipline. That's what it transpires like to me. Because I don't know why I keep having that. I have throughout my life, I carry this thing that I don't have self discipline. And I think it's the voice of my father somewhere in there in my head, and the comparison to my sister, because I had an older sister that was so good at everything. And it's so funny. You're the second person I'm talking about this today, about my sister being so good at everything that she touched. It didn't matter. Subject to school, top of her class, any subject, not just an area, like all of them. She was good at everything that she was doing. And I was compared constantly with that. So I always thought that I'm not good enough. So in that I don't have enough discipline because I'm not that standard. So I had to learn my own ways. I had to learn my own ways of doing things and figuring out things and what works for me after all, because I'm not my sister. I'm not anybody else for that matter. And the same as because I asked you how did you get to the points of, oh, this doesn't work, I need to do something different. Same. I got to a point where, okay, I've got these patterns and I seem to be repeating the same thing over and over. What do I do to change that, to do something different? So it was a case of pausing, pause, and don't react the same way you normally react, and change the story and change the way you behave. And it took a while. It took a while, and it's still a work in progress, even now. Because I was telling you earlier about the leadership skills, right? This is my thing. This is where I am literally putting myself out as the main character of my own story, right? And holding space for other people to share, let's say, and being seen by the world because I'm uploading these on YouTube, and I am not doing this for anybody else except for myself. So that was another lesson that I felt like I had to learn of, if I work for somebody else, why is it that I if they give me a time limit, let's say, it's so easy for me to be like, okay, I can do it by that time. I'm good because I'm so organized in that way. Sometimes I can do jobs for everybody else. When it comes to me, it seems to be like, yeah, I can give it more time, or I can do it another time. So I had to learn that too. Of, can I transfer those skills of working for somebody else and doing things for other people to me? Because after all, I am the most important person in my life at this
Yep,
point, you know?
that's right.
And if I don't look after myself, and I have this battle in my head of, I don't want to work for everybody, for somebody else all my life. I want to be my own, do my own thing, and be my own person and my own authenticity, spreading anywhere and helping in whichever way I can. So for that, I had to push. I had to do the thing that was uncomfortable. So for me, this YouTube channel that I've got, I started about 3 years ago, specifically for that, to just record myself and put it out, to become comfortable with being in front of a camera. And that was about 3 years ago. I've done a few, they're still there. And now more recently, probably in June, sometimes May or June, I had the idea of, oh, let's really put some energy into this and be consistent,
There you go.
because that's where the discipline comes in for me. Like, keep the consistency going
That's
and
right.
work through that. And more recently, of course, because I want to keep setting up different things for myself, I have made it into a habit now of waking up in the morning. And even if it is just like you were describing, squats, crunches, I don't know, lunges, anything like that, do a few of those before I do anything else. Just get out of bed, do those. For me, it normally is wake up and do meditation first, and then get out of bed and then do those. So
That works.
anything like that, yeah. Woo! That's
Yeah,
where I am.
that was really good. Um, and I've got a whole bunch of other things that I want to do every day, but I haven't worked them into the schedule,
Yes,
like meditation
yes,
and journaling.
yes.
And I've worked. I got to the point now where I can go to the gym and I can get on the treadmill and I can listen to the Bible and I can do some hand exercises because I'm just kind of stretching my hands, right? And I can do those three things at the same time.
Right.
But if I go walking in the neighborhood, I can listen to the Bible, but I can't add this because now I'm watching for traffic and trash cans and all this other stuff. So I have to at some point give myself grace of what I can do and what I can't do. What's not going to happen. And that's been some of the hardest thing. Yeah, I'll be honest to you. Last week when I didn't get my biggest item done for my accountability group for the month, which was building a digital course, I'd set a place and I procrastinated and I didn't do it, and I tried to do it the last couple of days and it didn't feel right and I just quit. Now I owe my partners $50 each. It's our accountability penalty.
Yeah.
But I was thinking through it the weekend. It's kind of shame. I was kind of ashamed of not having achieved that,
Mm-hmm.
but I just had to own it. Right? It's kind of that mistake piece, right? I had to own it and just, okay, now what am I going to do? Am I going to give up on that course? Is that not where I'm going anymore? Or am I going to put it back on the plate? And that was the answer. It's going to go back on the plate. I want to do it. I'm going to do it. So what had to come off the plate in September? So I started going through and, I'm only going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. So all those things started coming off my calendar. And what was interesting yesterday was the first, because Monday was our holiday. I come back and then all these things started piling back in my calendar. And I had to realize that if I don't control it, it's going to fill up again and I still won't get there.
Yeah.
So quickly started to say no to things again, because if you say yes to certain things, you say no to other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to purposely say no to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working through that for my coach session this morning of, I'm not going to do these, not going to do that, not going to do that. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to block 2 hours a day for my course, which doesn't seem like that's that much. But 2 hours a
When
day
there's a lot of things, yeah.
building my course, and an hour doing research, an hour doing some other stuff, it fills the day up. That's
Mhm.
what I was not doing.
Mhm.
So yeah, so just recognizing how you do things is so important. That personality, you know, how you react, how you do things. You just got to be self-aware.
Yeah. So you
So,
mentioned
so
God,
good
see?
for you that you're doing that.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
yeah,
you. Because you, and of course, self-awareness and everything, like
yeah.
that's how it all starts. That's how you learn about yourself. That's how you learn how you work the best or your best, or even if it's like 80%, you know. But 80% consistency is better than 100 now and 20 now and
That's
65
right.
now.
That's right.
So God, the God part, because we kind of stopped there when
Yes.
you asked me.
Sorry.
It's
Sorry.
all right.
Um, I never got introduced to God as a kid. My parents had gone to church before I was born. Something happened. They stepped away from the church. um, they would sleep in till 8:30, 9 o'clock on Sunday. I would watch religious shows, Oral Roberts, some others. And I was always kind of intrigued by it. And when we went to my cousin's house, my aunt and uncle, they would take us to church. So I was intrigued by it, didn't understand it. And then I started dating a young lady in my senior year of high school. And she took me to youth group. I would go to church with her. It was very important to her and her family. Her dad let it be known that they wanted their daughter to marry a Christian young man. And so I didn't take that as a threat. I took it as, I need to figure this out. Is this something I want to accept, right? Or do I need to say goodbye?
Mhm.
Um, and in February 1979, I accepted Christ. And it has been a rock for me to go back. Have you ever seen there's the poem Footprints in the Sand?
No,
No?
I
So
don't know.
it's basically somebody who passes away and they go to heaven and they look back in their life and they say, God, I don't get it. Said, I don't get it. And the toughest parts of my life, as I'm looking at the footprints, normally you and I are walking together, but in the toughest part of my life, you're not there. Why? Why did you walk away from me? And he says, silly person, I was carrying you during this toughest part. I was carrying you. And I just realized that that's what he does. He's, I could never have done what I did in Baghdad. Never could have done what I did on almost any of those projects. It's, my failing sinful nature would not be there. But if I focus in on him, ask him to give me strength, to carry me through this, he was always there. And that's why I continue to stay in church and stay reading. And I think we haven't done youth group for a while, but being that example to get
Mhm.
people to explore that. Because like I said, I didn't know it until I was 20 years old. I didn't know God till I was almost 20 years old.
I had goosebumps when you shared that, by the way. That's so beautiful, and the fact that you got emotional about it, that is such a big thing for me, you know, because you can see it, when I don't know, some people read other people very easily, some people don't, and when you're in the presence of somebody that's got that beautiful soul, you can kind of tell. And from the very beginning, I felt that, with you. It just feels
I
like you're
appreciate it.
such a beautiful person, a beautiful soul, and knowing that that's what helped you throughout your life, and that I know a lot of people struggle with that, they don't understand why it's hard and there's nobody there and anything. But when you cultivate that relationship with the divine, it's just something else, because everything else, like you said, you couldn't have lived through Baghdad, right? And what you had to do there. And I honestly, when you were telling me the stories, I was like, oh my God, would I have been able to cope through that? I know it's a different scenario altogether, and I probably wouldn't be in that situation, but stressful situations, let's say, and of course, that's my guiding light too. Even though I'm not part of any religion, but I know I'm not alone, in this world. I know there's something else that's greater than me, that's making my hands move, because I'm not thinking about it and fingers do this and whatever. There's something else that's greater, that I'm so grateful that is there and doing this for me, because sometimes I forget, I forget that I'm not alone. And like, especially like you said, in the darkest moments, which for me, June and July, maybe June more than July. July was a coming out of it, but June has been the darkest parts of my life
Is that
that
right?
I could. And it wasn't like anything really bad was happening externally, but it was very much an internal thing, like a mental thing of what is happening to me right now. Like everything that I knew about myself, everything that I had learned, anything was like, you need to forget all about it. Clean slate, done. And it felt like I was dying, which I totally believe a part of me, a part of my old self was dying in order for something else to come in. So of course,
There we
round
go.
about the same time, I started doing this, which to me is like, I have so much fun doing this. This is the thing that brings me the most joy at the moment in my life. The fact that I get to meet new people and learn new things and share with them about me as well. Even though, in all fairness, I talk so much. So that's why for me it's like more important to allow the other person to talk, because
Uh-huh.
it's my skill that I want to develop as well, to listen and to learn how to listen, because 2 ears, one mouth, right?
That's right.
And I really love this. I love the interaction. I love that I don't know who I'm gonna have here, because this is what I do. Okay, some of the people that I've had as my friends, and I've known some bits about them. But then when it's somebody like you that I haven't met before, I don't want to know about you. I want to learn now, and you telling me and figuring out and finding out, and it's magic to me. It's just magical, like getting to know the things that you've been through and the things that you've experienced and how you feel and how you process things and how you manage anything.
I
I love
think
that.
I appreciate that. And same here.
Thank you.
I think too many of us don't pay attention to our emotions
Yeah.
and don't try to understand ourselves. Now we can go back to the 1960s in America where we had the hippie movement and everybody was trying to find themselves and they weren't doing anything.
Hmm.
That's the wrong side of the pendulum as well, right? You can't ignore it, but you can't be so focused on it that you don't do anything. But
Yes.
if you're in the middle somewhere and you're moving forward and you're trying different things, you find the things that work for you. You
Yeah.
find the things that feel right to you. So one thing I do right now is I'm doing a career transition coaching, helping military, particularly military spouses, veterans find that job I say that energizes you.
Hmm.
And one of the things up front is self-awareness. Understand your personality, understand your strengths, your skills, your interests, but I think your experiences. Because
Yeah.
I think you learn so much from the experiences, but we tend not to focus on those. We just do things and we go to the next thing. We go to the next thing. We don't look backwards. Part of my success, as we were kind of alluding to earlier, was I would do say I was the environmental engineer at this base. And then I would go to the next base and I'd get back into that same type of position.
Hmm.
Well, I would stop and I would think. And even before I got assigned to it, as I was transitioning to the next base, I would think, what lessons did I learn? If I got back in that position or something similar to that, how would I react? What would I focus on? What would I change? Right. So now I had a list. So when the boss gave me the new job, I would say, okay, but I'm going to do it this way. And every time I did that, I I excelled. I got awards, I got a lot of recognition, I got promoted. So it seemed to be the right thing. But a bunch of my peers looked at me as like, well, how do you know how to do that? I don't know. It's just the way
Yeah.
I
Your
was
own
put
guidance.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I was put together and how I approach things. Somehow I was taught that. And it was kind of like on day two, after I retired from the military, on day two with Booz Allen Hamilton, the boss said, I don't have a project to give you right now, but this is where we're going. So, but we're going to do these personnel assessments. We take a week every quarter. We assess 25% of the staff. I want you to sit in the back of the room, see how this goes. So I sat in the back of the room. Every 5 minutes, they talk about a different person, and 3 minutes, 2 minutes focusing backwards, 3 minutes on the future, and they would do it in 5 minutes. I just loved how it was so organized. So I sat in the back of the room and said, what do I want my year to look like a year from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of worked through it and I said, here's the things that I think I'm pretty good at. Here's the things that I think I probably need to learn, which is a lot of Booz Allen stuff, right? How they do business development, how they write proposals, how they manage costs. Because I was going to be a business development guy and a project management guy. So I came up with this whole list. The next morning on day 3, I handed this to my boss and said, I think here's my personal development plan for the year. It's just, how did you learn to do this? I was up in DC a couple weeks after that, and I shared that with the group. And this one-star general walks over and he goes, how did you know how to do that? I said, it just was sitting in the back of the room applying the process to me and how I wanted to achieve over the next year. And
I am so in awe of you,
yeah,
honestly. I am in
yeah.
awe of you on any aspect that I can think of at this point. And
Uh,
as you were talking throughout there, because I have these moments where, and it's so interesting that this is showing up right now, because this is part of what I'm actually working with. I feel like I don't know how to be in my heart many times. It just feels like I'm so much in my head and worry too much about the things that are happening in my life that I cannot focus. What does love feel like? What does having an open heart feel like? And as you were talking, I could just feel it. I could just feel it.
you're
There
right.
was there was just a heart opening moment of you sharing, and I was so present with what you were sharing, and I just felt it right there and then, and I'm like, this is what it feels like, and I
Yeah,
absolutely love it, and I appreciate you so much for being who you are and for the processes that you go through, and I love how your mind works. That even you said you sat at the back of this room and you just picked up on the things that they were doing and applied it to yourself. That is freaking magic.
yeah.
That's what it is. So you were saying about the what program were you saying? You were re-coaching people into
Oh,
getting a
career
different kind
career
of job?
transition coaching.
Yes.
Hmm.
So are you doing that actively? Is it like
Oh
do you have
yes,
a website and people
I
where people can reach you and everything like that?
the best way to reach me is either through my website, achievenewheights.com, because I
Yes.
envisioned helping people up a mountain to
Yes.
achieve new heights in their life. That was my vision for the name of the company and for the logo. And my son helped design the logo. My daughter helped me just do a lot of different things with it. My wife does my finances and stuff, so it's kind of a family business, so
Cool.
to speak. Yeah. And so achievenewheights.com, and then on LinkedIn, I'm Don, middle initial L, Gleason. So there's a lot of Don. There's like 56 different Don Gleasons, but I'm the only one with the middle initial L. So I use that and just send a note and say, hey, I saw you here with Phoenix, and I would love to talk to you more about the career transition coaching piece. And I'll do a 30-minute complimentary consultation. Just have a conversation, see how I
Oh,
can help
lovely.
people, you
Yes.
know, understand where their frustration is. How are they doing it? Maybe they love the job, right? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they don't. What did they always want to do? How can we get them there? Make some connections.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk a little bit about my process, which I have kind of 4 steps. Understand your mindset, right? Understand what you really want to do, your focus. What do you want to do next? Because there's always something. That's the skills, interests, passions, experience piece. The mindset is how you approach things, your personality, etc. Networking to make connections,
Mm-hmm.
and then tell stories about your success. Everything we've done here for the last hour, every one of those stories, right? It wasn't just I was in charge of reconstruction in Baghdad, Iraq, $12 billion program. It was I faced the earned value problem of how we manage costs, and we implemented earned value after talking to the ambassador, and we implemented it, and we no longer had any. So now I've got a story, I've got the problem, the pain, the solution, the result. I can articulate that story. It's just like you could almost pick it up and write a book
Yes.
or a movie or TV show. Might be a comedy, who knows? Might be a drama. But you've got all the elements for a story,
Yeah.
and we miss that. And and I think that's why I got such a good job out of the military with Booz Allen Hamilton, because I was able to articulate my stories.
Yes. I think
And
that's so
I'm
important.
trying to teach that to other people.
Yes, I totally, I am so on board with that. Storytelling is so important
Hmm.
because it comes from normal people to other normal people. It's
Hmm.
like, if you can do it, I can do it
Hmm.
too. It's very inspirational. That's what I find it, you know. That's what's helped me previously too. Oh, they're similar to me. They've had struggles similar to mine. It means that if they could do it, I can do it too. So I totally see the benefit of storytelling,
Yeah,
100%. And I love the process that you walk people through, because you touch on every subject, on every part of themselves that they can look at and work through to figure out what they want to do with themselves, or how they want to explore and
that's
expand
right.
and grow.
Yeah. There's so much, John Maxwell says the only guarantee that tomorrow will be better than today is personal growth.
Mm,
So what am I going to learn today that's going to help me tomorrow? We touched on it a number of times, right? Every time I went through a situation, I cataloged it and I was able to, next time that happens, I'm going to do it this way,
mm-hmm.
right? So, small story. I'm just full of stories.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm I'm a squadron commander, and I was watching my group commander during a commander's call. He was on stage, and somebody asked him a question, and it got me thinking about how he approaches things. And we were talking about that later, and he goes, one thing I regret in that commander's call was I was standing up on stage, and because we're doing medal presentations, right? We're presenting medals to military and civilians, so it's a very formal part of the ceremony. Everybody stands up. We're standing at attention. The flag is there, you know, and there was a number of civilians who sat down through the whole thing. He says, "I wish I would have stopped it and asked them to stand up."
Mm-hmm.
So about a year later, we had a safety stand down day. So I did kind of a commander's call, and we were talking about different things with safety. And in the beginning of that, I had the exact situation. Everybody's standing up. We're presenting a number of medals. I'm standing there as the presiding officer. And I look over, and there's about 5 civilians sitting down, kind of joking with each other during the ceremony. I'd already decided I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So I walked over to the microphone. I said, "I'm going to interrupt this ceremony for a second. I want everybody to keep your eyes on me. But there are 5 people who are sitting down there in this ceremony. And I think that's disrespectful to the people up here that are getting these medals. And I would appreciate if you would stand up, come to attention, and give them the respect that they would give you at the same situation. Thank you." And I walked back to my position. They stood up, and I was kind of like, I wonder how that's going to fly, right? Wonder what's going to happen. So as we break and we're heading to the restrooms and stuff, I had more people. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for doing that. I hate that, but, And the next morning, the union representative walks in my office and says, "I need to talk to you about that because that was not the way we do things." And I said,
Oops.
"Well,
Weird.
you and I can agree on how we do things or not, but we can disagree on how we do things. But
Yeah.
in my unit, when we're doing a formal ceremony and everybody's standing up, everybody stands up. I
Mm-hmm.
agree. I can't force them,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, I just asked them, and they
Yeah.
did. And if they don't want to show up from now on, I'd be
It's
okay
up
with
to
that.
them. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're going to be there, you're going to follow the process.
Yeah.
And I went and briefed my boss, and I said, "You just need to be aware I might get a union grievance, and it might come to your level." And he goes, "I 100% support you." And I said, "Thank you very much."
Wow. I love that. I love this. I love this about you, by the way, because you've mentioned even before about I don't know the answer to this question, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be so honest about it, and even this up front, this might happen. I love the transparency, that you bring with everything that you do. There's
Thank you.
one more thing that I wanted to ask you because we've been
Okay.
here for quite a while.
It's been a long one.
Your relationship with your wife, like
Uh-huh.
how has that been throughout this whole years? How long have you been married for, by the way? And
40,
oh my
42
God.
years.
Oh my God, that's impressive. And how has it been? Because I imagine it hasn't been just straight line of, oh yeah.
We made a commitment to each other to work through the process, to work
Mm,
through the challenges, that we
hmm.
were not going to just quickly walk away. I almost
Wow.
screwed it up a number of times. I didn't use the right language. I didn't recognize the work. We didn't communicate. And it came to challenging times, several times, but we've had the highest of highs and a few lows. And we're committed to walk through it, to stay together. And it's kind of like now we go camping. I like to go to breweries. I love trying different beer. She loves bird watching. She likes wine. So we go to wineries for her. We go to breweries for me. We do bird watching. I love to be in the environment,
Yeah.
so sometimes instead of watching birds, I'm looking at animals or I'm looking at plants. And she's like, we're here for birds. I said, I'm just here for you. I'm just here to enjoy nature. I look at birds. I look at everything around me. Sometimes I just stop and I think,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes I get the joy of just standing there and seeing the creation around me, and it takes me to different places. And she now doesn't get upset with that.
Yeah.
She'll see a bird and she'll just say, "Oh, he's thinking about something. We'll come back to it." So we just learn to understand each other.
Yeah.
It's been a give and take.
Mm-hmm.
I had some great examples in my life. My parents, her parents.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, most of my grandparents were had passed before I got to that point
Mm-hmm.
to really observe them. Lots of mentors along the way who I saw, that we talked about how to raise kids, how to deal with kids, how that relationship has to change along the way.
Yeah.
I made a comment one time to somebody because her daughter headed off to college, and she said it was like the saddest day of my life. And I said, "Congratulations, you succeeded." She's like, "What?" I said, "Your whole goal in life is to raise them so they can step away and go to
Yeah.
college and be on their own, right? It's not that they're going to leave you. They're going to
Yeah.
call you. They're going to connect with you." That's what our daughter still calls every couple times
Yeah.
a week. We talk as friends. We're still parents, but we talk as friends. And then the relationship's changed. And she knows she can call and ask any questions. My boys don't do that, but my daughter does. So
Well,
So I
boys are
said,
different, so.
yeah, so I said, "Congratulations to her." And she was mad at me. And she came back about a week later and she goes, "Last week when you said that, I was mad as hell at you." I said, "But now I recognize what you were trying to say."
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective. So
Yeah.
we spent a couple of years getting to know each other, and it was fun.
I absolutely love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I love all of it. I
Hmm.
love your life story. I love your uh, personal stories. I love all of you. You are so amazing. And I
Oh,
am so grateful that you accepted my invitation.
I'm honored
And
to
that
be
you're,
here.
oh
Yeah.
my God, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get this episode out. I am so excited to get it out. It's going to be so good. It's already been so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I think this is where we end.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you
And
for the opportunity today, and I appreciate you, Phoenix, and I
oh
appreciate what
my
you're
God,
doing, and I
thank you.
appreciate how you walked through the experiences, like you said, June, struggling, thinking
Yeah,
through it, committed to
yeah,
this. You
yeah.
found out that's kind of what love is, right? You kind of go back to the when I deployed for 4 months and I was without my wife. When I was working for 3 years, I'd come home on weekends and I'd fly out and I would spend nights by myself. And it's like, this is not what I want, right? That's love. You start to realize how you want that something in your life, right? Um, like right now, I love the
Yeah,
environment stewardship, and I'm missing that. So I want to get that back into my life. So when you realize that you're missing something, you start to realize what love is. And it can be for people, could be for animals, could be for hobby, could be feeling of your
anything.
body when you're physically
Yes,
fit, right?
yeah. And I totally believe because you mentioned the body now, keeping your body physically fit, it keeps your mind fit as well. 100%.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's an honor to be here with you today.
Oh my God, the honor is all mine. Oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to sleep now. I'm gonna be like, like this, because it's 8:30 in here, and I gotta go to sleep soon because I'm waking up early tomorrow. But still, I'm gonna be like, and going through. I am so grateful. I am so grateful for you and for all the people that you've touched in your life. Not in a bad way, and even in a bad way, because you said about your friend and how she reacted to what you said. But then there's good in everything. So thank you so much for being here and for everything that you do into the world.
I
It's
hope we
amazing.
I hope we touch a whole lot more people through your podcast.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much. Well, have
Thank
a
you.
great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good rest.
Thank you. Bye.